Here we go. Fish Stripes Live. Eli Sussman here. First show, fully vaccinated, and a little tipsy as well, but we'll get through it. Just back from walking my dog. She does not like these West Coast games. Likes to step out right in time. A few minutes late, but we thank you everybody from joining us on Twitter, on Twitch, on YouTube, along with Ethan Badowski, along with Kevin Barral, breaking down a 4-game series. All 4 games starting at ridiculously late hours, 9:40 Eastern time. All 4 of those games. First one coming up tonight, less than 50 minutes away. And we start with really the one thing that's on top of everybody's mind, the guy in our background today, Jordan Holloway, making his first major league start, which will be his, 6th appearance with the Marlins overall this season. He's been terrific so far during this season in a relief outing. You could kind of see this coming because they stretched him out. His most recent outing went 3 innings, like 63 pitches. And Ethan, I'll just throw it to you. Like what we're expecting from Holloway tonight. Why does Don Mattingly think he deserves this opportunity right here?
Well, I think the main reason is he hasn't allowed a run this year, and he's looked fantastic in his relief appearances. And he's pitched 1 inning, he's pitched 2 innings. I think last time you mentioned he pitched 3 in a bullpen game. So yeah, this guy has been fantastic. And it's been a really pleasant surprise for the Marlins because the last time we saw him in 2019, the results were very mixed. You know, you saw a lot of good from Holloway in a lot of games where he would get out to good starts and strike out a bunch of guys, and then he would just kind of blow up. But sorry, I'm holding in a yawn. It's these late starts, but he what's it called? He had all these blow-ups kind of in Jupiter when he pitched.
Yeah, I mean, just to quickly throw some numbers behind it, I mean, it was really more extreme than anybody else in the farm system, just so people can realize this. And this is low A. You know, this is 3 levels below the major league level, where the first month of the season had one of the best performances out of any prospect in the season. And then in the organization. Then the second, I think it was like May or June, where he had more walks and strikeouts. He had an ERA of like 9 in the Florida State League. He was playing in like the most pitcher-friendly league that there is in minor league baseball, and he couldn't get guys out. So yeah, continue with that. But he was he looked like a very raw pitcher, an unfinished product.
Yeah, and it was always, we always knew he had the stuff, right? He was always throwing high 90s, and he had a wipeout breaking ball. But now he's added really 3 or 4 pitches. And Donnie, that's, when he was asked about him in his pregame press conference today, he doesn't fear the idea that his success in the bullpen wouldn't be able to translate to the rotation because they believe it's a true 3 or 4 pitch mix. He actually said 4 pitches. So I think Holloway can get it done. I mean, look, when you only allow 4 hits in 10 innings and you strike out 10 and you haven't given up any runs, that's pretty fantastic, whether you're doing it, in 10 appearances or you're doing it in 5 like he has. So he's been really, really impressive. And I don't think a lot of people expected this because I kind of thought, this was when the Marlins brought him up last year for the COVID shortened season. And even this year, I kind of thought, okay, this is the last chance effort. They don't see any reason for him to be pitching in the minors. They're going to try and figure out what they have. But he has been huge. He's been great. He's been a great weapon out of that bullpen. And now all of a sudden you're looking at him and you're saying the Marlins need a starter badly because they have that really, really solid front 3. We all know about, Pablo and Sandy and Trevor. But they've struggled to find a 4 or a 5. They've really struggled because Castano hasn't been great, and Neidert came up and he struggled. And it's like, who are you going to go to? Are you going to go to Braxton Garrett? Well, he hasn't been great in his first 2 starts in the minors. His stuff didn't look major league ready last year. So, a lot of people are calling for him, but I'm like, what am I missing? What did we miss watching him last year? I didn't see that he's major league ready really. And then you have all the injuries down the line with 6-0 Eliezer, Eddie, the whole 9 yards. So they could really use a 4 starter right now. And I think that Jordan Holloway, if he can continue, he's not going to pitch a shutout every night, but if he can continue to pitch effectively and have his stuff look this good. His last outing, he was lacking in a little of command. He wasn't getting on top of the breaking ball as much. It was kind of staying up, but if he can get back to getting on top of that breaking ball and getting swings and misses, and we all know about the fastball, the life on the fastball, I think he can definitely be effective in a starter's role. And I'm certainly, after seeing, his 10 innings so far, I'm certainly intrigued to see him get a start tonight.
Yeah, this is a guy who I think deserved to be the starter at some point. I think I said it last on the last series preview that he should have been the starter for the Milwaukee game, the one that Castano started, but I think his just the way that things worked out. But I'm glad he's starting in this game. He's a guy who's just gonna produce for this team. He's been solid for this team too in that bullpen game against, I think it was the Diamondbacks.
Mm-hmm.
This is a guy who I think he is on his last chance. He's done everything he could do in the minors. Now it's time to come up and produce in the major leagues and see if he could get it going in the major leagues, which I'm pretty sure he can. And this is probably the team to do it against. The Diamondbacks, it's not the craziest team to face, but this is a team that the Marlins swept, and he was part of that. He had 3 solid innings. He struck out a couple batters. I'm happy to see, and I'm excited to see what Holloway does in this start.
And the other thing is sorry, Eli, just one last point is the Marlins see him as a starter, and they came into this year, they brought him up and then they sent him right back, and then they brought him up again. And when Kim Ang was asked about it, she said, we still see Jordan as a starter. So you kind of see, like, okay, you saw as he was being great in relief, like, they got to give this guy a chance to start because they still see him as a starter. And it also, we thought, okay, he'll make a couple relief appearances, and then when the minor league season starts, he'll go down there and get his starts to build up and to really complete his development as a starter. But if he's being so effective here and he can do it here, why not complete his development up here and let him flourish as a starter in the starting role? We saw it with Trevor Rogers. We didn't really think he was definitely didn't think he was a finished finished product when he came up last year, but he finished out the regular season here, and look at what he's done so far this year. So this is definitely an interesting way for the Marlins to kind of say, why would we send him back when he's been this good at the major league level?
It's impossible to send down if he doesn't allow a run. To this point, I would walk back a little bit what Kevin said about nothing left to prove in the minors. We're less than 2 months removed from when they optioned Holloway down to Double-A. Like, that was the plan, and leaving spring training. It wasn't even a decision at the end of spring training. It was with a couple of weeks left that they said, well, this guy's not really factor for our opening day roster. We want to send him to Double-A. And that was, as Ethan mentioned, like, with the idea of still developing him as a starter, that, what he did his last minor league season, and even what he did in 2020, he didn't get an opportunity to do much due to COVID, that they felt he had a lot to still iron out as a starting pitcher, that he had a lot to prove before even being considered for an opportunity in the major leagues. And you look at their Double-A rotation right now, and it's a little thin on the back end. It was pretty clear that they had every intention, as recently as a few weeks ago, of having him in Double-A and trying to prove himself as a starter. The big difference with him this year, you could point to a few things, but the slider that he has, which is a different pitch from his curveball. He was most known for his fastball and curveball as of a couple of years ago. That's what had people dreaming of him as a reliever, having just those 2 pitches. He has a beautiful curveball that's 15 mile per hour differential with his fastball. You could really dream about how it works in the pen, but the fact that he has this entirely new pitch, well, not totally new, but an actual workable slider that he wasn't really using before, it unlocks this whole new world of possibilities. Mattingly referring to it as a 4-pitch mix, which is, I don't think that was ever really brought up with him seriously as a prospect as recently as a couple of years ago.
I'm looking at Fangraphs now, and in 2020 he threw fastballs, curveballs, and changeups. This year he's throwing fastballs, sliders, and curveballs. So I think they are still developing that changeup, but we haven't seen him been throwing it because he's been out of the pen, so he hasn't really needed it. Now, as a starter, I think you would like to get a look at that changeup and make it a 4-pitch mix all of a sudden, where you add another weapon, and that slider has been so effective. He's actually throwing it 50% of the time this year. So he's throwing it more than it's his most used pitch. He's throwing it more than his fastball, and he's obviously had really good results with it.
Well, that's why tonight's going to be fascinating to watch. You can't throw your slider 50% of the time as a starter. I mean, you can get close to that. I mean, the rules of pitch usage are kind of changing in baseball, where you could get close to that over a full length start, but you can't really reach that number. It's just not efficient because so many of those pitches are either going to be swings and misses, but more of them are just going to be waste pitches. They're going to be balls, and you're just not going to get deep into the game. And he's not expected to make a full length start tonight anyway. I think Mattingly threw out the figures.
They said 4 or 5. Five, and they expect 4, but 5 would be really nice. He said basically.
Yeah, they have really a handful of guys that are decently rested. They didn't have to use the pen all that much in their last game on Sunday, thanks to Sandy. So that's why this lines up pretty well to have him on the heels of that. In the YouTube chat, Lorenzo was asking whether I'll stay up for this whole game. But we'll let the vaccine decide. I got my shot about 12 hours ago, so we'll see how I'm handling that. The arm is really sore, but so far feeling pretty good. So I'll try to stay up. You'll know if I'm up, if there's any tweets from Fish Stripes about that. We'll definitely stay up to see Holloway's full outing, to see how he handles all that, and to see, as long as the game is still close, because I mean, to me, I think it's an awesome opportunity for him, but until he actually unless he does a great job tonight, then he's still kind of on a start to start basis. They do have Eliezer Hernandez kind of knocking on the door, coming up relatively soon. It depends whether he'll make 1 rehab start or 2 rehab starts. He won't be a factor in this series, but he could either sneak on at the very end of the road trip or at definitely the following homestand after that he still has to prove. With the other guys though, it's been unfortunate. I mean, the reason why we're in this position is because Nick Neidert fell flat. Yep. Daniel Castano kind of regressed from where he was last year, and last year, and they just gave him another opportunity, and it didn't really work out that well. So they know where they are with him. That it's kind of a process of elimination. What else did I wanted to get to with tonight's game? Tonight's lineup kind of interesting one, isn't it? We got Isan batting in the leadoff spot. Where he's obviously had a couple nice moments since coming back. You look at the overall numbers and they don't wow you away. It's kind of helped by the fact that it's crazy because he's leading off. He's only a few days removed from batting in the 8 spot. I mean, that's why he has a few intentional walks already this season, because he's batting in front of the pitcher. So quite a reversal there. Miggy Rowe sitting. And as I mentioned on our website, that Miguel Rojas, for whatever reason, he loves playing against the Diamondbacks. His numbers in his career against the Diamondbacks are better than any other National League team that he's played against. So an interesting decision to get him a little rest for this game. But I guess, Kevin, we'll touch on Isan a little bit, because he's in a fascinating position, probably more so than anybody else. And Craig Mish actually touched on this on his podcast earlier today about what they're going to do with Isan once Jazz gets back, because that could be only a matter of days away when they they bring Jazz back. And we've talked about here on the stream about how kind of where they stand in relation to one another, but that's a kind of a fluid situation now that just because we're dealing with these small samples. So Kevin, what do we need to see from Isan? This could be his last series before Jazz is back on the active roster. What do we need to see from Isan in order for him to stick on the roster in any role, like in the reserve role? What does he need to show to make it clear that he can help the team win, moving forward, even with Jazz back?
Yeah, I just think he has to be a solid player. Just get your hits, do what you have to do. I think he's been better than what we saw for sure last season, and the first time he got called up. So I'm liking what I'm seeing from Isan. He had a grand slam, which was a good grand slam. And he's been solid. I mean, he's doing what he has to do. He's facing a big test tonight. I mean, he's batting first. From going from 8 to first is a big jump, and it just changes your mentality because you're not going to get walked intentionally, as you said. Honestly, Isan just has to stay consistent, get your hits, make your plays on defense. And I think he should be able to stay on this roster as the backup at most.
Yeah, I can't really figure it out with Isan. He's had some really good moments where he's had some really good at bats and taken a lot of good pitches. And we know about his plate discipline is really, really advanced. And obviously he had the grand slam and the home run off Scherzer and stuff. But there are just some at bats that are just bad where he's he's almost being like too patient, and I think that was the critique on him when he first came up. After his great season in 2019, was like he wasn't being aggressive and he was, not swinging at pitches that he needed to. Like watching the other day, and took like 91, it was like a 3-1 pitch or a 3-0 pitch or something, and he took 91 down the middle, and it's like, dude, like go with that, be aggressive, get that shot at it, and he just didn't take it. And I just want to see him be a little more aggressive at the plate, because we see what he can do when he puts the bat on the ball. Like he can hit the ball hard, and his numbers are like really weird. I mean, he's only played 9 games, so his numbers are going to be really skewed, but his walk rate is finally below his strikeout rate after the last couple games. He's up to a 22% strikeout rate, but he's got a 343 OBP helped by those 3 intentional walks, and he's slugging 407. So it's like he can get on base, and when the ball is, when he hits the ball, it goes far, but he's just not making enough contact. He's just not hitting the ball enough right now. So I just want to see him, like Kevin said, be more consistent. We need to find some consistency in these at-bats, because there's not a lot of it right now. He'll have a really good night, and then he'll have, 2 really bad nights in a row. So I don't know what the Marlins do. I think we said before, in spring training, it was like, well, they're probably done with him, because what is there left to prove in AAA? But he's going to play there because, Jazz is going to be here. So it's like, okay, you send him down to AAA, and he's probably a little too good for AAA, and he's past that, and he has nothing left to prove there. But what is he going to be doing on the major league rosters? He's not going to play the John Birdie role, because he can't play multiple positions, really. He can probably only play second base. And so is he going to be like Jose Devers, where he just gets an at-bat maybe every other day? And it's not like his defense has been that good to the point where he could be a defensive replacement the way Jazz was last year to Monte. Even Devers at times was a defensive replacement in his short stint here. So it's like you don't really know what the Marlins will do, what they can do with him, and really what they should. But a couple of days ago, you're saying, okay, he's making a really good case to stay here, but after his last couple games, it's just back to, when Jazz comes back, Jazz is just going to pop right in, and we know he is anyway. But now the question becomes, what do the Marlins do with Isan? And I'm not sure he has proven that he deserves to stay up yet, because he is hitting only 185 right now. So
yeah, I mean, just reading the tea leaves, though, interesting decision. When they sent down Jose Devers, they didn't send him to AA, which was, it seemed to be the initial plan. They sent him to AAA. And that seems to be intentional. Like, you don't send him there unless you actually plan to keep him there for an indefinite period of time. His very first game there on Sunday, he got a pretty clutch RBI hit. He made a couple key plays defensively. So got off to a good start. The fact that they sent him there makes it seem to be the plan that Devers is going to be there. Either he played his first game as a shortstop. That seems to be the plan, is shortstop. They also signed another infielder, Devin Marrero, who you may remember. I don't know what kind of sicko was like watching the September 2019 Marlins very closely, but Devin Marrero, he appeared in 5 games, and did he start 1? I think he started 1, and he came off the bench 4 other times, or maybe all 5 off the bench. That he's a Miami native. And he had prior major league experience before 2019 as well. But the fact that he was still on the free agent market in early May kind of speaks volumes about where he is as a player. I mean, yet they signed him up, and he's at AAA now, where he's kind of a versatile infielder. They have him at AAA. They obviously have Eddie Alvarez at AAA, who they like a lot, but they kind of understand his role. Who else do they have? It's crowded. It's a crowded infield at AAA.
Dunan is in AAA.
Yeah, our podcast guest Joe, he's on the injured list right now. A hand or wrist issue.
Is Demetrius Sims there too in Jackson?
He's down. He's at AA now.
And Brigman and Bryson
Brigman. Yeah. They have a very crowded infield, especially when Dunan is healthy again. So that would seem the way that they arrange that would make you think that they don't plan to option Isan anytime soon. And so, yeah, the question becomes at this moment, at this moment, they have 14 pitchers and 12 position players. So in order to make room, they would have to shift that basically, where if they were going to hold on to Isan while Jazz comes back, it'll end up being 13 position players, and they find a pitcher to send down, which will be a very curious decision because they're obviously not going to send down any of their potential starting pitchers, knowing how they already have those big questions on the back end. They'd have to send down a reliever, and most of these relievers are doing pretty good. I mean, we've mentioned that is that the bullpen has been a bright spot for the most part. Outside of, I wanted to talk about Anthony Bass, I guess, real quick. Now that I mentioned the bullpen, that it really like bothers me that so I was concerned about bringing him in the situation they did on Sunday in the 10th inning in a tie game. I did not feel good about that.
Yeah, who wasn't concerned about
it? And he ends up giving up the game-losing hit. It's only loses them the game because they didn't score in the bottom of the inning when they had an automatic runner on seconds. And that's usually a situation where we're seeing most teams are able to get the run across. So that's not really a reflection on Bass. When I was actually watching the outing, though, like as soon as I thought I had my original thoughts about being concerned, and then you watch the outing, and he did something. I looked it up like as soon as he did it because I'm like, I've never seen this before. That his slider was better than we've ever seen it, not just like in this season, but I think he had 7 swings and misses on his slider against only 4 batters, and that's something he'd never done in a relief appearance before. He never gotten that many whiffs on his slider. And he was doing it against lefties. He was doing it against righties. And it was a good outing, what I'm saying.
Yeah,
he had a good outing, and he ends up getting the loss for it. And it kind of continues this narrative that he is, and it's fair to say that he might be the most disappointing pitcher, definitely the most disappointing reliever for them this season. But this outing was a sign of progress to me, that doing something he did almost everything possible to control that game. Just one ball in play, and it was a flare. It was just a soft line drive. Yeah, a flare. It was like a flare into left center field. They gets the run home, but that was a nice step for him. I'm not saying that he should be pitching important innings like that on a regular basis, but that's just unfortunate. I mean, that loss was more on the fact that they just weren't scoring runs, not so much on Anthony Bass in particular. And that's going to be the other big question of the series is like, how many runs can you produce, especially on nights like tonight where Miguel Rojas is getting what seems to be just a normal day of rest,
it's an interesting day of rest to give Miguel Rojas because you don't usually see, the first game of the series being a day where you give a guy rest. So that was a little like it kind of caught you off guard. But I get, you're going out west. But I don't know. It is going to be another one of these ones where the Marlins have to find some runs. But just on Bass, I thought that actually might have been the best he looked in terms of pure stuff all season. But that damn extra innings rule, kind of screwed him. And I sent out this tweet like the Marlins, get the extra inning rule does the Marlins in. And, everybody wants to go off about Bass and scream about Bass. But if he gives up that hit in a normal situation, he only put 2 runners on base, so it's just first and second with 2 outs, and then he got out on the next batter anyway, out of the inning on the next batter anyway. So without the runner on second, it's a scoreless appearance, and it's the best outing. It's a clutch outing in the 10th inning, and it's the best outing he's had all year. So, it just it's that kind of season for the Marlins, and it's that kind of season for him, right, where he looks tremendous, and he, in the same way that he had a guy lean into a pitch that blew a save in New York, this little flare lands in left center field, and it's like, God, can anything go right for this guy? But I understand fans' frustrations and stuff with him because, people are calling him Heath Bell and stuff, which is, a little getting a little ahead of ourselves. But it's been frustrating. But that definitely, I think, was a bit of a positive sign. But going forward, with how well Bender's looked and Yimmy's looked really good, and some of the other weapons, Simber and Curtis, some of the other weapons that you have back, they had used some of their guys, but it's like, how is that the guy? I understand that, you paid $2.5 million for him and you're trying to trust him and you're trying to find the role for him. But we've seen his role has been really good when it's just kind of like keeping the game intact in the 6th or the 7th inning. But I obviously, along with a lot of other people, when he steps out there in the 10th inning and you have the runner on base, I'm kind of questioning that decision, saying, there's not somebody else we could throw out there. But, he was close. He almost did it, but it just didn't go his way.
Yeah, this might have been his best outing, but I was like a little bit shocked when he came out. I was expecting Yimmy to stay on or a guy like, Bender to come in and maybe test to see how he does in the 10th inning. When I talked to Bass in the offseason or around spring training, he told me his slider was, I think, one of the pitches he's worked on the most during the offseason. So, I mean, when you talk about the sliders, that slider did look good. And he started off well. I mean, that inning started off well. It was just a pitch that I think it was Tyrone Taylor who got the best out of it. And it hurts to see because Bass has been disappointing, but he hasn't been horrible either. This was his best outing. He started off well the inning. There's other games where he has blown the saves, and this is why we see Yimmy at the closure role and him pretty much as a setup man now.
Yeah, I don't want to spend too much longer on Bass, but one thing that I did notice is that he mentioned entering the season that he made it a pretty big priority to use his splitter more as his third pitch. And I don't know how many people remember that, but the very first screw up that he had, this first blown save of the season, was he allowed a home run on his splitter. And he has not thrown his splitter in a month. He has not thrown it at all. So that's what I might actually hop on the media availability the next time that we have Bass on to ask him, like, is that coming back at all? He's given up on that. He's throwing it. He hasn't thrown it in an entire month. You don't need 3 pitches if you're a reliever. We see a lot of guys even in this bullpen that are fine just with 2. You don't need it. But I mean, that was something that he kind of volunteered earlier this year about something that'd be different about him that would make him a more well-rounded pitcher. And for whatever reason, he's ditched that. So, I mean, I thought he looked fine this most recent outing, even without it, but just something to monitor with him. And I mean, looking at the Diamondbacks, they were in a pretty good spot when they first played the Marlins just a week ago, and they haven't won a game since then. They are all of a sudden they are the coldest team in all baseball at this moment. We are catching them at a good time. They have a worse record than the Marlins. They obviously have a worse run differential. That was even true when they met the previous time, but they are kind of in a free fall there's no like easy way out of it. The expectations for their team was like relatively low entering this year, just knowing what they were contending with in the division between the Padres and the Dodgers and the lack of spending, but a couple of key injuries. And they have not won a game in a week. And tonight they have like the weakest link in their rotation going, Luke Weaver, where he hasn't had a decent start in almost a full month. So it's coming off like a really good 2020 season. He is not the same guy whatsoever. They're pretty vulnerable at this moment, even though this is going to be a road game, obviously, for the Marlins. But they, what I'm most looking forward to, looking past tonight, we've already mentioned it's going to be very interesting, but looking all the way to Wednesday when we get Trevor Rogers versus Zach Gallen. I mean, I think that's the game that I'm going to be fascinated. Every single time that Trevor pitches, of course, we want to see like how much longer can he keep it going? Is he going to be solid every single time out? Because he has been solid aside from that very first start of the season. He has been solid, if not good, if not great, somewhere on that spectrum every single time out. And now he's facing a slumping lineup, and the Marlins on the other end, they finally get to face Zach Gallen. I mean, this is something that came up, of course, when they met a week ago, but Gallen's turn in the rotation didn't come up during that series. And now they get him. It's got so close to getting Jazz versus Gallen on the field. Like, it's only going to be a couple of days off, where it doesn't seem like there's any possibility Jazz is back on Wednesday. That most likely comes back for the Dodgers series this weekend. So close, but yet, I mean, Ethan, we followed Gallen, of course, all the way back to when he was he started in AAA in 2018, but especially in 2019 when he was on that insane run. Remember, it was like once we got to like the end of April, it was just he was on everybody's. It was just a watch every single time out. When is he going to get called up? When is he going to get called up? He was on that level of excellent, and he's been pretty terrific ever since he made it to the majors. The Marlins were betting on him. I mean, that trade is going to be something that we dissect for years for a lot of reasons. But the bottom line is they only traded him because they believe that there wasn't another gear towards him. There must have been an assumption there that he would regress a little bit. And as he comes into this series, he's slumping a little bit by his standards, but for the most part, he's been one of the best pitchers in baseball the last couple of years.
Yeah, well, this guy's fantastic. I mean, you talk about that AAA season, Eli. In 14 starts, he had a 1.77 ERA and over 11 K per nine, and he's a guy that's never had below 10.25 Ks per nine in his MLB career. And he just came up with the Marlins, and we were like, all right, nothing left to prove. Let's see what you got, kid. And he was really fantastic. And he started 15 games with the Marlins when he came up in 2019. And yeah, it was frustrating because you're sitting there at the deadline and you're watching this guy be so fantastic, and the Marlins are just kind of, he's the one bright spot that they had on that roster, really, except maybe like a Pablo or Sandy. And all of a sudden, they move on from him, and you're saying, here we go again. The fire sale. You got this young kid, and you're moving on for him and picking up a prospect. But obviously, you see what that prospect has become in Jazz Chisholm Jr. So with Gallen, it'll always be what could have been, but it'll be okay because we've got Jazz. And so it's like, I think I tweet this a lot whenever somebody tweets something good about Gallen. I always say, thank God that Jazz is really good, because I can admire this guy and root for him to be really good and not have to be mad about the fact that, not resent the fact that he's really good. But yeah, this year 3.04 ERA. He actually has a 2.99 FIP, which is the best of his career. 10.8 Ks per nine, which would match his 2019 total when he first came up into the big leagues. And he's just been taking off. But we thought he had this ceiling around like a 3. Maybe he was pushing a 2, and on this Diamondbacks roster where they don't really have a real a true number one, then he becomes the number one. He can be a headliner in the rotation, but in the Marlins rotation, where would he fit in right now? Maybe he's the 3, maybe he's the 4, depending on where you see Trevor and stuff. So
it's a fun question.
Yeah, it is a fun question.
I think probably he would. I don't think you can make it. He definitely would not be the ace of this rotation. I think, and that's very fortunate, because I think as recently as like last year, he was a borderline Cy Young candidate, and you make the case that he was, but a lot has changed. That's something that I recorded a little podcast this afternoon just about how much I admire the fact that Sandy keeps getting better, that Pablo keeps getting better, and then of course we've spoken about Trevor just exceeding everybody's expectations and exploding onto the scene. That this rotation, we were talking about it as being a strength of the team last year, and unfortunately, we're missing Sixto because of injury, so we'll wait to see exactly what he is. But the reason why this team is doing what it's doing, despite some other holes on its roster, staying so close to first place, is the fact that, all those key starters at the top have been really carrying things, and they've all simply gotten better than they used to be. It's really going to be fascinating to unpack exactly how that happened. You got to give a lot of credit to the players. You got to give plenty of credit to the organization as well, and the coaching staff, just bring the best out of these guys and always just fine tuning their games, because each of them it's really blows me away, the fact that they've figured out ways to continue getting better. And give Gallen credit that he's been consistently awesome since he's been called up in the majors, but it's really they're raising the bar. And I think for him, this will ever start with him is going to be, for the Diamondbacks, he's really the one guy that they're excited about in their entire rotation. Whereas the Marlins, you get 3, and then you're going to have 4 if Sixto comes back, and we'll see what Holloway turns out to be. Maybe you have a full rotation of guys that you're really thrilled about. So in that aspect, I think we're pretty lucky to get to watch this.
Yeah, I just want to say one thing on Gallen, which is like, I think you could probably drop maybe 5 to 7 rotations in the major leagues where you say, okay, this guy is an ace. He would be the number 1 on this rotation. The Diamondbacks is one of those teams. They're a pitching staff that's really, really struggled this year. So you look at that and you say, okay, 5 to 7. Then you look at it and you say, there's probably 5 to 7 teams where he's a 3 or a 4. And you might consider the Marlins one of those teams, because you have Sandy and Sandy would be the ace, even if Sixto were up this year, just because of the leadership ability, that the leadership quality that he's shown in terms of taking over that ace role. So I think Sandy would certainly be the ace, and then Pablo is such a solid number 2, and then you can talk about Trevor versus Gallen. So yeah, you're looking at the Marlins pitching staff is so good and the Marlins had such a, an embarrassment of riches almost, and they still do with all these pitchers. I still don't know what they're going to do with all these pitchers, and you didn't know what they were going to do with all these starting pitchers when they had Gallen, but they needed a bat, and they went out and got Jazz, and all of a sudden you look at that, and in 15, 20 years, you could say, maybe not on the same level of Gary Sheffield getting traded for Trevor Hoffman, but in 15, 20 years, that could be a trade where you look at two of the, one of the better pitchers of a generation and one of the better, shortstops of a generation being traded for each other. And that would certainly be something funny to look back on, that the Marlins were involved in that.
Yeah, and when you look at it, when you go back to that trade, I mean, this might have been maybe the best scenario for Zach Gallen. He goes to a team where there aren't many bright spots at the pitching, and he just comes in and has a Cy Young caliber season last season. And when you go into Jazz, at the time, the Marlins were pretty much stacked on pitching when it comes to the minor leagues, and their infield wasn't the greatest. So they were going to guy in Jazz Chisholm, who now is up in the majors, putting up good numbers before his injury. And you have Zach Gallen, a guy who I think we all expected him to be the future pitcher, possible ace for the Marlins, and he gets traded, and he's in a situation in Arizona where he's able to possibly be an ace and a number one starting pitcher. I do like this trade for both sides. Gallen's putting up a good season right now, pretty solid. I mean, this is a guy who we really had high hopes for. He was having a good season. I think we're all shocked when he got traded, but it's worked out for both sides at the end of the day, and that's what we have to think about.
It's not often a trade works as for both sides as well as this one has. It doesn't happen very often. So I think that's been the cool thing about it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, 15 minutes away from first pitch of the series out in Arizona. Luke Weaver versus Jordan Holloway, the Marlins versus the Diamondbacks. I mean, one other news nugget that I noticed just yesterday, on top of everybody's mind, I think, is the Rookie of the Year race in the National League, just because with Jazz finally being on the cusp of a return and Trevor just being pretty much the front runner, I think, by anybody's accounting, as long as he continues to do what he's already done, that entering the season, most people's pick to be the NL front runner for that award was Ke'Bryan Hayes of the Pirates. And they just transferred him to the 60-day IL.
Wow, I didn't know that.
He can't come back for more than 3 weeks from now due to a wrist injury, a wrist sprain that is going to end up keeping him out at least 2 months of the season. There's some precedent of guys that only play a half season or 2/3 of the season and they win the award. But that's kind of the exception. That's not the norm. The fact that he's at that kind of disadvantage now is that's just a huge boost to people that are hoping that when the Marlins get that. Of course, the Marlins in their history have won 1, 2, 3, 4 of those Rookie of the Year awards, but none since Jose in 2013. And they've had some interesting rookies the past couple of years. I mean, Sixto, it was crazy that Sixto even made a charge at it, even though he only made 7 starts last year, that he was someone that snuck into the conversation just by his by how dominant he was when he was up in the major leagues.
Could he have won it twice? Would that have been possible? Could he have won it twice?
Yes, he is a guy that he's eligible this year. We can't 100% rule him out, but you can mostly rule him out just because, we heard from the latest injury update from the team that, Mattingly mentioned it, and then Kim Ang mentions it, that she was kind of even non-committal about when in June he might be ready, that it's not even a guarantee that he'll be back next month, that they are really bringing him along slow. And so for him, at best, he maybe gets half a season in the majors this year. That's going to be a tough hill to climb just because of how good his teammates have been, how good Jazz was, and everything else that Jazz brings outside of his ability, just his ability to capture people's attention and really electrify that. That's going to be a factor with the voting. Hoping for a full recovery for Ke'Bryan Hayes, because he's going to be potentially one of the best players in all of baseball.
He's a stud.
It's going to be so much fun to watch him. But just selfishly knowing that you have a couple guys that, regardless of where this Marlins season goes from a team perspective and a competitive perspective, that both of these rookies, if not other of these rookies, it's crazy how many of guys might actually sneak into this as the year goes on. I mean, if Jordan Holloway, fingers crossed, if he shoves tonight and he still has a 0 ERA through 15 innings of work, then all of a sudden that really extends his leash of like sticking in the majors for the foreseeable future. And with Sixto coming up at some point, and the next wave of guys, of course, this being a first minor league off day of the season, gets a chance to really process what's been happening the first week in the minors. And the star of all stars has been Jesus Sanchez, who's hitting over 500 with a million extra base hits and having a lot of fun doing it in the minors. That I guess we'll close it out, but not close it out. But one of the final things we want to discuss is that opportunity for Jesus Sanchez. I've been slacking on this, but I think I might finally put out the article tomorrow about Garrett Cooper and what's up with Garrett Cooper, because he's again in the lineup tonight. I gotta double check. He's hitting somewhere in the heart, heart of the order.
Which even though I can't understand. I don't know. What were you saying? What were you saying, Eli?
He's an enigma for sure with this team. At the moment, he's riding a 3-game hitting streak, which is the longest hitting streak of his season, 3 games in a row, which just speaks volumes about how inconsistent he's been. And even during that hitting streak, just not hitting for power, not doing anything that really impacts the game. I think, is he still stuck on 1 home run from like very early?
He's got 2.
He's got 2 now.
He hit that one. He hit that one against the Rays, and then I want to say maybe he hit one in
Milwaukee,
in DC, in Milwaukee. Yeah, he had that double and a home run.
Right,
and you're thinking this might get him out of it. Maybe he'll wake up. He hit the ball hard a couple times, which he actually, when he's putting the bat on the ball, like he is hitting the ball hard, which isn't surprising because he's obviously a powerful hitter, but it's not like overly impressive hard. Like I'm looking at it right now, and his average exit velocity is 49 in the 49th percentile according to Baseball Savant, and then he's in the 70th percentile of hard hit percentage. So like teams might buy low on him, and they say, okay, we can get this guy for cheap and maybe we turn him around. But I don't know what the Marlins can do here, because they keep giving him chances, because it's not like Duvall has really taken a stranglehold. He's been better. He was better on the homestand. He was pretty good on the homestand. I think he hit maybe 2 or 3 home runs, if I remember correctly. But Cooper right now, he's hitting 189, and he has a 267 BABIP. So he's just striking out too much. Like he's just not putting the ball in play enough, not putting the bat on the ball enough. He's only walking at a 5.8% clip. That's not what you're looking for him. He is hitting for no power. ISO is just taking I think it's slugging minus, hold on, let me see if I remember. Slugging minus batting average, right? Yeah, slugging minus batting average, basically seeing how much power you hit for. And he's a guy that hits, last year his ISO was 217. This year it's 0.095. So he's not hitting for any power this year, which is the one thing that you would think, okay, he's struggling. Well, at least he's hitting the ball out of the ballpark or putting the ball in the gap, right? Like, no, he's not really doing that even. So let me see if I can find his average exit velocity right now. It's 89.2, it looks like, which isn't anything special really. He's not hitting the ball hard very often. And so you just, maybe it will come around, but I haven't seen the signs. It's been a lot of 3-pitch ABs, it feels like, for Cooper. It feels like it's been a lot of, I think we talked about this on the last stream. It feels like it's been a lot of swinging strikeouts. He's getting caught looking. He just looks lost. And, I don't know if it's a mental thing. Like, I know that it seemed like he really struggled with the idea of not having the DH, and he was really frustrated by that. And I can understand his frustration, because it's basically took away his value to the team, but he's gotten plenty of chances. The Marlins have had him in the lineup. He's played in 30 games this year. He's got 104 plate appearances. That's already almost as many as he had last year, when he was out with COVID and stuff in this short season. But I don't know what the Marlins do with him right now. And if Jesus has another week where he's setting the world on fire, I mean, these numbers are insane. It's obviously only 6 games, but he hit 556. To hit over 500 in a week is ridiculous. People don't do that. He slugged 1074. He had he had 9 singles, a double, 2 triples, and 3 home runs.
Yeah.
So
and I mean, just to add a note about that last time we saw the Marlins in AAA 2019, they played in the Pacific Coast League, which is a lot of really hitter-friendly places, a lot of high altitude, a lot of hot weather. But this whole series was in Jacksonville. Jacksonville is not a very hitter-friendly ballpark. That's the only place he's played so far. And there's not like much cheapy. There's nothing cheap about all that. Like that, no. Those conditions are actually there's some similarities between that and Lone Depot Park in the majors. He's not really getting any favors from his conditions. That's the fact that he's putting up those numbers even in a small sample. It is highly encouraging. It's just the way that I see it. I mean, we spoke about early in the stream about Isan, and that even with Jazz coming back, you think Isan might be able to factor in this active roster somehow. And of course, you have Alfaro coming back, and they'll have to make a decision on one of the other catchers to bring him back. But if they are really insistent on still carrying 14 pitchers, having an extra pitcher compared to a position player, Garrett Cooper does have minor league options remaining. I'm not saying bring up Jesus now. I'm saying just when you bring Jazz back to the roster, I mean, which of these role players is going to be more effective for you, Isan or Garrett Cooper? And I can't believe we're actually having that conversation at this stage of the season, but something to think about, like which of those players as a part-time player, because that's kind of what it'll be, especially with Lewis Brinson in the middle of actually a pretty decent stretch where Brinson brings so much more defensively, and he actually is hitting for power, even though he's striking out a ton, just like Cooper does, that if we're in a situation where like Brinson may be a more complementary piece to the team, and off the bench, like Isan, the fact that they're even like comparable it's insane to think about from where we were a month and a half ago in spring training when Isan was unplayable. When Isan looked lost in spring training during that second half, and Garrett Cooper was their hottest hitter for much of spring training.
He was great in the spring. And actually, you mentioned that Brinson is still striking out a lot. He's, I know he had a bad week of strikeouts, but he's still striking out less than Cooper on the season. He's striking out at a 29.4% clip, and Cooper is up in the 31%. He's above 31%, but Brinson isn't walking any. He's only taking, walks 2% of the time. But I definitely think, when I saw that Garrett Cooper has options, all of a sudden that's interesting, because the cries, if Jesus has another really good week, I'm not saying he's going to hit over 500 again, but if he has another week where, he keeps his average, to begin the season up over 400 or something like that, and Cooper struggles again this week, you're going to be looking at, there's going to be calls, a lot of calls. The calls are going to get louder for Jesus Sanchez to come up, because he had big league experience last year, and he didn't look very good in his big league experience, to be fair. But if he tears the cover off the ball in AAA, we saw how loud the calls were when Isan was doing his thing in AAA, and we talked about when Gallen was doing his thing. You're that close to the big leagues. Everybody, the biggest fan base, everybody on my Marlins Twitter timeline at least, is locked into what's going on in AAA and even on down the line a little bit. So, there's going to be a very close eye being paid to. They're going to be paying close attention to what Jesus Sanchez and even what Lewin Diaz is doing. He had a great week too in Jacksonville, and he plays first base, which is another position that somebody could replace Cooper at. So he's got to get it going, because he could be expendable all of a sudden, where you try, you bring up one of these young outfield options to try and inject life into this offense the way that we think Jazz will when he gets back. And then also, on down the line, when you look at the fringe players on this team right now, it's like, well, if Isan's hitting the ball for power, and he's doing it every once in a while, but Cooper's not hitting the ball for power at all, and Cooper has an option, then you might keep Isan. So he's got to get going, and he's got to get going for more than just to save his ass right now, because his ass really could be on the chopping block. But he's got to get going because the Marlins offense needs it. They had a good series against the Diamondbacks, and I think they'll have another good one, because this Diamondbacks rotation is not very good. They have like the 27th best ERA, this pitching staff in the majors. So I think they have a really good chance to break out again and to have a really good offensive series. But we saw, against Milwaukee, the first game was pretty good, but the second and third game, they were really lacking in offense. So if they just had Cooper in the middle, every night going and he was hot, then it would be a different story. But for his own sake and for the sake of the team, the Marlins could really use Garrett Cooper to get going right now for sure.
Yeah. Cooper's a weird situation because and I was gonna mention Lewin, because Lewin has been good. He's a first baseman. Cooper plays first, so it would be an option to bring up Lewin. But as you guys said, Jesus has been great. He's been better than great. It's been crazy what Jesus has done, and I think we for sure have to keep a close eye on these guys that are playing in AAA right now because Cooper's on the chopping block, and he's one of those guys which it's his value's low. They put it in the comments. His value is very low right now. So and the minor league options just makes it a bigger reason for the Marlins to just drop him to AAA or drop him to the alternate training site, which I think is the fish tank. So I think it might be time.
That's our name for it. Yes,
that's our name for it.
Yeah.
We tried. It didn't work really well, but Eli and I tried to get that going.
Yeah, I like it better than alternate training set. I'll say that.
Me too. Yeah, me too. It's more. Yeah. It gives more credit to what's going on down there.
Mm-hmm.
One thing on Lewin really quickly. In 6 games, he hit 308, 379, slugged 731. He only has a 3.4 K percentage so far. Obviously, that's not going to stay the same, but
just one
he didn't strike. Yeah, he only struck out once all week. That's pretty insane. And I was really high on Lewin because the results weren't really there in his time in the majors last year. But when he put the bat on the ball went far every time and was hit hard pretty much every time. And he had a good winner. Where was he playing, Eli? You were keeping up with all of that.
He was playing in the Dominican Republic.
Yeah, and that's a good winter league. And he what's it called? Was putting the bat on the ball and hitting it hard there. And it seemed like every time he put the bat on the ball in the majors, he was hitting it hard. And I watched his BP in spring training, and it's really impressive. And his setup is a little different this year. He's got his hands a little higher, and I think we're going to see good results from him because I know that Craig Mish last year, like during the COVID 2.0 spring training that they had at Marlins Park, was saying that the Marlins saw him as their number one hitting prospect. So they're clearly really high on this guy, and he was another guy that was in the majors last year. So they thought he was ready enough to play in that situation. So if he keeps tearing the cover off the ball, then that's another candidate. So.
Yeah, Dark Sage, do you have our question for us in the chat? Because we're kind of running over time, but this guy wants to fire off a question in the next 30 seconds. We'll take it. But otherwise, we need to head over to the game. Kevin, you love this segment, given your take on how many games you think the Marlins are going to win in this series. 4-game set against the Diamondbacks. Diamondbacks are really badly slumping. Swept the Diamondbacks last time they faced. What do you think of this 4-game set?
I think they could sweep it again, but being realistic, I think they'll win maybe 3 out of the 4 games.
I like the realistic is winning the series. I love that. No, I picked the Diamondbacks to win tonight in my fish picks just because I've been really bad with my fish predictions lately, and I'm just trying to get the Marlins some good juju.
You were perfect for a few games there. So
I had 3 perfect games last week, but I'm just looking at this and I'm saying, this is a series that the Marlins have got to dominate. Gallo will be a tough matchup for them, but this is a team that they should be beating up on if they're the team that we all think they are. It's a nearly 500 baseball club, and this is a rotation that their lineup should be able to handle, but somebody's got to get hot. We've been saying it for a while, and Miggy Rowe's been really good, and they need somebody else. And help is on the way, luckily, with Jazz starting a rehab assignment tomorrow and Alfaro starting a rehab assignment tomorrow, and help is on the way.
Yeah, and I wanted to say that this is probably the best opportunity for the Marlins to even get over 500. This is a team that is pretty much not good. The Diamondbacks haven't won a baseball game since playing that Marlins series and getting swept. So it'll be interesting to see what happens tonight. I think the Marlins have just a big chance to, for sure, make something happen because this is an offense that when they want to wake up and they want to produce runs, they will, for sure.
I'm gonna take a screenshot of this question and answer
I
it
love
another
this.
time because
I love this
we're
question.
running over time. The game has started already.
Yeah.
Thank you, Dark Sage. We'll get back to you on that for sure. About
Very
it's a long
interesting
question.
discussion. Yeah, no,
Yes,
very
we'll get back.
interesting
We'll get back to you. Thank you for the question. Thanks to everybody for tuning in. First of four, Diamondbacks, Marlins, go Fish.